Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Payment Ecosystem podcast presented to you by Cashfree. I'm Shiladitya, and I'm thrilled to be talking to some of the smartest minds at Cashfree to get a sense of what it is that drives them, how do they think, and most importantly of all, what appeals to them about working at a place like Cashfree. In this first episode, we've got somebody who probably doesn't need any introduction at all. He's the co founder and CEO at Cashfree Payments, Akash Sinha. So Akash founded Cashfree in 2015 when, while observing the thriving sort of hyper-local logistics startup scene in India, he realized there was a lot of opportunity here to improve the transactional side of the business by making it completely cashless. And that's where the idea of Cashfree was born. We speak to Akash today to hear more about his story and where it is that Cashfree is headed for the future. Hey Akash, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great, Shiladitya. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. It's good to speak to you again, and of course on a brand new show that this time around. We are going to be talking to you about a lot of things, which obviously you're very well versed with. But this time we want to capture a few of the nuances of, let's say, culture, life, the payment ecosystem
Mm,
overall. So I'd love to start off basically, just to give everyone listening in your own story. So tell us a little bit of your earliest days. Why do you wanted to get into tech? Why you wanted to get into software? And your motivations to building what you're building today.
right. No, first of all, I think thank you for inviting again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And
Likewise,
see, I think
likewise.
we we started this company 7 years back, but the inspiration goes back almost what would I say like 14 years ago when I was in college. I did my engineering from Triple IT Hyderabad, and it was very tech intensive college, right? So all we read about what Google is doing, what Facebook is doing, what are the new things happening in tech. So I had a lot of exposure around what is happening in tech industry by being in that college. That was number one point. Second, in our college, I think we are encouraged a lot to do things on your own, right? So the focus a lot was on building solution rather than just spending time on theory. So that was
Right.
second, and then third is more about in general, like finding inspiration and motivation to do things, right? When you see people around, building stuff, right? I'm building something cool, then you start building confidence, sooner. So there would be some element of the ecosystem where I was in, and slowly, as we because I was 18 years old then, right? I mean, at that age it's
Yeah.
very difficult to know what you want to do in life, and I was also a bit clueless. But as we progressed, say, after 2 years, we started seeing opportunity. We started seeing problems in the industry which can be solved using technology. And that was the key part, right? In one area you have the strength, other areas you have the ability to start seeing the problem, and the third is you build the confidence to actually do something for those problems. So that's how things started back in 2008 9. I started doing simpler freelancing job, right? Build a very vanilla ERP system for, say, a design company, build a CRM for, say, a tech company, right? So these are small projects we did. And slowly, say, once I hit my third year, fourth year, then really started thought, why can't we do something on our own, right? So we picked very small ideas, right? Small ideas around how do I help students in India to choose their college in the best possible way, or how do I help people who work in offices interact with them in a convenient way. See,
Mhm.
those days we did not have Slack, we did not have WhatsApp. Only
Yeah.
thing we knew was Facebook. So those ideas were very new that time. We worked on it, we had some success. But as you said, right, I mean, bigger things require a bigger team to go after it, requires some money. So by that time we did it for 1.5 years, right? We felt this requires more effort, and we should slowly phase them out, and then we went out to our jobs
If I can
after.
ask you, I mean, in this journey also, at various stages, was there any moment or was there any particular sort of turning point, particular point of inspiration, whether it's a person, quote, situation, anything like
Yeah.
that, which sort of influenced you, which you
Yeah,
can
this
recall?
is, yeah, I mean, this may be pretty funny, and I haven't shared a lot about this instance. See, I watched this movie, Social Network, back in, I think, 2009. And that
Yeah.
movie did
Okay.
make a very profound impact on, what is possible and, what you can achieve if you do things on your own. So that was, I think, like a seed. And then slowly started investing more time reading about people who have done things, reading about how Apple scaled up, right? It's more about getting knowledge about what's happening in tech industry. Then I think after maybe a year, Flipkart started in India. It started, I think, in 2008, but it got popular around 2008, 10, 11. Also, things were happening in India at a better pace. So this all built up and it started making sense to me that India also has good opportunity around solving things around tech. I did not know what to do, but I knew that this is possible for me to build something good out. So that was the outcome with which I left my college, went to the job, right? And given that the academics was very rigorous, so we did not have a lot of energy to start that then and there. So did my job. I mean, learned a lot about how things happen in larger organization, like what kind of processes enable say 10,000 people to work together and work toward a common goal. So those learnings were also pretty important in the hindsight. So I did spend time at Amazon for 2.5 years. And then by 2014-15, the startup ecosystem in India was pretty maturing. Things were
Yeah.
transitioning a lot. And I also had a strong sense about on my capability, right? I mean, what are things which are possible for me to do? Right. So because in college I had some exposure about building products, some exposure about doing sales, some exposure about finding new clients. So those things really helped us and give the confidence to start something, and also have the the entire sense of being successful in that. Right.
Yeah.
And that enables you start it. So that's how things
Yes.
started. I think for 9 months we looked around what's happening, stumbled on payments problem, then built a small MVP, and then things really scaled up from there.
No, wonderful. And getting into the payments ecosystem, getting into, let's say, the problem space that you chose, right? You obviously looked at,
Right.
multiple things. You must have looked at the opportunity, uh,
Mhm.
at the time when obviously you guys started, and then
Yeah.
overall the landscape of payments in general. So, what was that sort of unique insight? What can you tell us about in the crowded space of payments, fintech, the state it was? What
Yeah.
did you feel that this is what I want to sort of uh, you know uh, put all my energies into?
Right. See, I mean, in those days, right, in 2014, 15, we saw a plethora of internet companies going live in a very fast paced manner. Every month, you'll
Yeah.
have 10 new apps coming online and trying to go after customers. See, before
Right.
that, right, if you look at era of 2009, 10, people are not actually building, transactional product on the web that much. People are busy building content product, build gaming, things more around social. But
Yeah.
2014, 15, after the success of say Uber, Flipkart, a lot of commerce related tools were getting built for mobile and internet for the first time. In India, it came slightly, maybe after 2 years, but it came eventually.
Hmm.
So what we saw that time, right? These guys had a lot of problems around payments and banking, and payments and banking was built to cater brick and mortar stores primarily. It was not
Yeah.
catered to build companies who are digital and companies who are, require high skill processing of transaction. Right. So
Hmm.
there we started speaking to. We had a hypothesis that they have bunch of problems, and we met almost 300 businesses. Before shipping out the MVP. Right. We met businesses in offline on online space, and what we realized the problems. So there were payment incumbents in the industry, but they're only
Hmm.
focusing on one problem. Right. For rest of the problems, they had to go to the banking partner and try to get a solution from them. And banking partners can only work with very few selected and large customers. It's not possible for them to work with startups. It's not possible for work them to
Yeah.
smaller business, right? Because it requires bandwidth for you to serve it, right?
Yeah.
And we also saw all these payment incumbents was focusing a lot on distribution and less on product innovation. And and that was the state of Indian B2B
Yeah.
market that time, right? We just built something once
Yeah.
and try to sell it continuously for 10 years, and you don't want to evolve it. And the reason
Yeah.
we thought there aren't enough tech people in these companies, or these companies are not tech and product driven, they're largely sales and distribution driven. So there we figured out if you focus on product and tech a lot, if you're able to, like onboard multiple solution on a single platform, then it could become very easier for internet companies to scale their business and don't have to reach out to multiple vendors for their payment problems. So these
Right.
things worked out well.
Nice.
And what we saw eventually, a lot of companies in B2B, B2C space were primarily driven by product driven people and who eventually appreciated these kind of solutions. So a lot of things had to play. I think if I have to go
Of
back,
course.
right, it's
Of
not just
course.
what you do, it's also about how
No.
ready
No.
the market is, what is the
Yeah.
change in perception of the people out there. And that makes you, successful eventually.
And even at the time, right, you obviously you mentioned that there was no focus on product building, there was no focus on the the newer age uh, customers that you eventually catered to, right, when you built this out. uh,
Yeah.
Coming back to having just come from, let's say, larger organizations yourself, right, just before starting out Amazon, Google. What did you sort of implement, or what did you use from the learnings there to in the way you built your company, in the way you built Cashfree out?
See, I think the hindsight, a lot of learnings became handy when we started to grow bigger. On zero
Hmm.
to one journey, I think zero to one journey, actually, you don't need a lot of learnings when you're just starting out. But once
Right.
you start going beyond, say, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, then you can start using those learnings about doing things at scale, right? So then you start getting the awareness, right? You also need a customer support team. You also need
Correct.
a full-time operations team. You also need a full-time sales team. Before that, you do everything on your own, right? You build the
Yeah.
product, you do the sales, you write the documentation, right? So point is, if you
Yeah.
have too much of that learning, then maybe starting could be difficult. The good
Yeah,
part is,
because you think larger from day one instead. Yeah.
and that's where we have seen, the sweet spot for people to start a companies have some exposure of larger company, spend 2 to 3 years. But if you spend 15 years, right, then your mind has learned things which may not be very helpful in starting zero to one.
Correct.
And that's the sweet
Correct.
spot which I've seen working in Indian ecosystem a lot, right?
And
And that's what we use.
and you guys have obviously scaled to that level, right? From those sort of humble beginnings of being a small team, doing everything yourself from as a small founding team. What's the journey been like? How big is it now? And could you tell us a little bit about the step changes that have led to where you
Yeah,
are today?
right. No, today we are a very large organization. I think so today we have almost 800 people spread across 3 locations,
Yeah.
right? So when we started in 2015, we were just 2 people, and even till 2017, we were just 5 people. So team did not grow a lot. After 2017, we started seeing our product getting more and more success, right? We saw growth in demand,
Hmm.
and then we actually thought of in expanding the team in few areas. So from there, team started to expand, but again, not in a very aggressive way. We are very diligent on, like how much people to add, looking at the revenue projection that we are anticipating. It's
Of
always
course.
around everyone should work at 100 to 150% capacity, and then it makes sense to hire a new person in early stage startup. You shouldn't, if you try to optimize too early, right, then chances of going wrong is more. And we followed that, right? We overstretched ourselves, worked 12 to 14 hours. All the early employees did that, I think. So initially, when we had 10, 15 people, we had to overstretch. And then we
Yeah.
started to realize it's impossible to stretch beyond a point. Let's add few people dedicated for that job. And that's how I think company has gotten built over time, right? That's how we have been able to add, more verticals, like have a proper sales team, have a, dedicated product management team, have a dedicated
Yeah.
designers, right? Till 2019, I think we just had like 1 or 2 people in product management, right? So everything was done by
Wow.
engineers and sales people were working together. But beyond a point, we realized we need a PM who can optimize things further, right? Who can make sure new ideas are being implemented in a faster way. And that created the
Right.
need of setting up these vertical, right? Recently, we have set up a data science vertical. We are setting up data analytics vertical. So all these verticals got set up at the right time. We might be say late by 3 to 4 months in few areas, but I think organically we learned it, right? This is what we need to grow, and that's how
Hmm.
company has grown to 800 people, right? I mean, that's the only way. On the day one, no founder can imagine, right, to handle this much of volume I need
Correct.
700 people. You have to grow the organically, and that is the path we have also taken.
That's very nice. In fact, that was, leading to, let's say, the question I was going to ask next. A lot of people sort of entering this ecosystem, or people who, let's say, look at a company or read about a company, let's say
Mhm.
Cashfree, they probably hear about it at the stage where it's become a little bigger, right? They see you as a CEO. They try to
Mhm.
understand. They think this must be one massive operation. uh, Life must be very different for you, for the team, at various levels. So if I were to ask you to demystify that, a little bit, for people who see it this way, right? Is it how is it all about the interviews, the podcasts, the public persona that you have to portray as the CEO,
Mhm.
or is it also equal amounts of, let's say, heads down, hard work, stress, and everything that comes from the previous stage of life as well?
See, I mean, if I have to draw a parallel, right? Again, I'm not a parent yet, but I believe it's very similar to raising a child. It's very tiring, but it's also rewarding, right? So, I mean, you won't regret, investing your time and effort, even though you fail, and that's the
Yeah.
good part of it. Right? At least you tried to justify the talents you have. You tried working towards it, And at times your success does is not fully dependent on your effort, right? I mean, as I said, right, if you're becoming successful, the market has to allow that, the timing has to allow that. If these two are not in favor of you, then it's very hard to be successful, and we have to accept that point. There's no point, trying to push, when you're not going to get any success, right? So
Very
large part
true,
of
and very
work.
good analogy as well, I think.
Yes.
As
Large
as
part
a
of
new parent, I
success.
can empathize. Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like raising a child. No, large part of time goes into internal culture building, right? Because see, you have 800 people. How do you make sure they all work towards the same goal? So
Yes.
recently we added this OKR culture in the company where we define, say, these are the four goals that company is trying to pursue, and that we have derived basis the internal target, market condition, and then every department to derive their goals, which is mapped to these four company goals, and then these keeps like boiling down to the last people, right? So whatever
Right.
effort, say, a program is doing or salesperson is doing, they know which goal of company I'm trying to fulfill, and that's how they feel alignment with what their effort is going to achieve, right? This
Yeah.
we did
No.
almost 1.5 years back, and this also gives a lot of clarity around efficiency of people, or also making sure they have the right job, and they are busy with the right thing, rather than doing something which is not resulting into anything that company wants.
That's true. That's true. And I think it's a very
Yeah,
well established model as well. It's of course, uh, you have
yeah,
to set it up right. You have to disseminate that information in the right
yeah,
way. I'm sure that's
yeah,
not easy task to just switch on OKRs as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if I ask you, on a personal level also, and then similarly with, let's say, the teams you work
Hmm.
with, how what how do you maintain motivation? Right. One is having goals and knowing what you need to do, but it's also being motivated to keep at it, right? So what's
I
something
think
you've
the
learned or the takeaway around
The
motivation?
simpler answer here is to, you have to make people successful on a regular basis to keep them motivated. If the people feel success in what they are doing, I think they'll stay motivated, right? If your
Hmm.
salespeople, if they're able to close deals, like in a good momentum, right? Say every 2 months I'm able to close a good deal, then feel good about it, and they'll believe, there is a support in the system which is making me successful, right?
Hmm.
So there are two reasons when individuals can't get success: either they have a skill problem, or second, they don't have the right ecosystem to support them, right? And a lot of times when people introspect, right, if they have a skill problem, we also give them feedback, they start working on it. But if you have a support problem, then that is something people believe will take longer time to get fixed, and they stop being motivated to do the work they are supposed to do. So we have to be very careful of that. And that's come back to the point of hiring in the right quantity and hiring the right people for the job. And that's where hiring becomes a most difficult task in building a company, right? You don't want to make mistake, right? You will end
Yeah.
up hiring wrong person for the wrong job, or you're not able to help them be successful, right? Suppose I
That's
hired a
true.
someone who's great in artificial intelligence, but I don't have any relevant work for that person. That person won't be motivated to even come to office or spend, say, 6 to 10 hours of their time. It's not so complicated. We don't have to set up very large processes, large measurements. It's very simple. You have to understand what they need to be successful, and you just have to make them successful.
Right.
If a company is able to do it, I think they can keep people motivated. If they fail to do it, then it's difficult for them to retain people for longer.
And how do you sort of apply the same principles to yourself, right? If it's not just you, it's you, your co-founders, it's even that core
Right.
team, because that same thing flows down, I guess.
Correct.
So how do you apply the same thing to yourself, or have you do you make a mental checklist of what to get done, or what's your method?
See, we always priority items, all the time. It's not like I start the year with four priority items and that carries for the year, right? Because things are very dynamic, right? There will be something different in the regulatory, there will be some shift in the market. So you always have to be prepared and go after, what is more important at that moment, but keeping the larger annual goal in time. So we plan annually. We say by end of this year, these are areas we have to, go after. It could be, say, being a leader in XYZ product, or attaining this much of financial revenue, right? Or attaining this much of profit margin, right? So this is what we keep at whenever we make a decision, right? Then decision making becomes easy. See, I mean, beyond a point, the job of founder is largely on making decisions in a very short amount of time. You have to make decisions in a very high frequency, right? You don't have a lot of time to think. You don't have a lot of data to even analyze whether you're making a right or wrong decision. So that's where we spend most of our time, right? By knowing the larger goal of the company, and then working towards making sure people are enabled to do that. And again, if you boil it down, things are get simpler, right? I mean, one could be, I am expecting a larger growth in volume, then I should encourage people to invest a lot in technology, right? So that my system can handle larger traffic. Second, my number of merchants are going to grow up. I should have enough people who can handle them to make them successful, and I have to invest in my account management team. Third is, my salespeople is going after three new segments this year. So I have to put a team who can train them so that they can go and be successful.
Okay. So, moving from, let's say, a serious note to a lighter note, while all of this is great, it's you obviously stay motivated with the goals of the company. You wake up every day, you come back, and
Mm,
make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself and for your team. But what about, let's say, your off hours, right? How do you also switch off from the heads down mode and try to get some, let's say, breathing space? What do you listen to podcasts? uh, you know do you listen to music? What's your sort of go-to music, if I may ask you, or any other sort of recreation that you enjoy and you think you can share with us?
I think best part of music in India is it's always there in the background, even though you're working, eating. See, music is there all the time. I don't think even you're driving, music is there. See, for me, what I realize, relaxing is very, very important. Otherwise, you'll get burnt out. If you have to
Hmm.
keep doing a startup for 10, 15 years, you can't afford to be, getting burnt out so soon. So you have to spend time relaxing, right? You have to spend time with the family. You have to spend time in doing things that you like other than work, right? So for me, I
Yeah.
read whenever I have free time. I read about stuff. It doesn't have to be, say, business growth or anything like that. I read things are very simpler. That I read fiction. I read things around geography, history, something which is good, and I have built curiosity around those things, right? So which is, I think, very handy for me. Second thing I do is travel. I think I travel very frequently, as in,
Hmm.
like, once in a month. And that also gives you good insight about how world around is revolving,
Yeah.
right? So this year I've been to almost 8 different countries, and whenever I come back, I can draw a lot of parallel about how things are being done there and how things are being done in India and what is the gap. In few cases, I come to know we are doing better in these places. In few places, we know we are not there yet, but we can improve. So there's a lot of learning when you start interacting with different cultures, different languages,
Hmm.
and end of the day, it enriches your thought process. It gives you a good sense of what thing can work, because you already have seen this working in some other culture, right? So there's a good
Right.
probability that this will also work in India with some high certainty. So traveling is definitely good. I think, again, apart from these things are busy in the work, but yeah.
Of course. No, totally. I totally understand that. And in fact, given the space you're in, right, of course, which is payments, fintech, I think everywhere you go, there is it's a sector which has a different flavor in every different country. So for
Correct.
you, if you must have seen that in all its variations and stages of, I would say, maturity in various markets. So brings me to the question, right? Why do you, over these years of building cash free as well, why do you think fintech is like the future? Like, what do you think is, there's so much more opportunity here in the ecosystem?
See, India, we have like a lot of entrepreneurs who want to scale their ideas up, but they don't have at times right support to do that. Right? India is a land of entrepreneurs, and this is not true for now. This has been true for last 50 years. Right? Everyone has some idea, some jugaad, and they have a good sense about
Yeah.
scaling this up. So people have very good understanding about what is the need of the market. They just don't know how do they build their stuff to cater to that market. It's one of the bigger success of fintech is if they can enable new business ideas, if they can enable new business opportunities, and that will overall create more value in the ecosystem, right? And this we have seen happening on our platform in last 7 years of a journey. We have seen
Okay.
very new kind of businesses coming up, getting built on cash and scaling up to a very large number of transaction, right? Very large, I think up to 10 million transactions on a say, monthly basis. So that is one.
Wow.
Second is fintech also makes people more efficient, right? So I mean, rather than spending 3 to 4 hours every day on plumbing, payments, and banking, right? You can do that within say 15 minutes, and then you can spend rest of the 3 hours in focusing on the actual product and acquiring new customer. And this is very true for small businesses, right? Small businesses are very much passionate about their customers and product, but they don't want to spend time on things which are something they don't understand very well. It's
Hmm.
critical, but also it stresses them a lot if something goes wrong there. Right? Imagine you start as a like a mobile cover company, right? Every customer for you is important. If
Yeah.
payment of 5 the customers fail, they'll come back to Instagram, say, what is wrong, I wanted to buy it but I can't buy it, right? So they feel so helpless. If you can help
Yeah.
these guys on those moments, right, then they don't have to think about the noise and they can focus on the right thing. So
No, it's very
efficiency is
true.
there, costing is there, like enabling new business ideas there. These all, if these are happening, then only we can say fintechs are getting successful, right? It's not about the revenue or the valuation they're getting. It's more about can they create new value in the market, which enriches the entire ecosystem.
Right. And it's like infrastructure, right? It should be invisible but functional, and it should work. I
Exactly.
think that's what
Exactly.
fintech,
Yeah,
any fund in the fintech ecosystem is trying to be. Yeah.
yeah, so money movement is the heart of commerce, I think, and it has to work all the time just to let people transact among each other.
Correct. On that note, what do you, let's say, is that one side of, for someone coming to into this space, right?
Yeah.
Getting into the payment ecosystem, or even joining, looking to join Cashfree, let's say, what is that sort of quality that you look for, or you recommend everyone have to become a part of this industry?
See, one is, so again, you have asked two questions. I think I'll answer the first one. Whenever someone's trying to get into fintech, I recommend them to read a lot, like read what is already built. And fintech is a sort of a regulatory, like segment. So you should read about what is
Mm.
possible, what is not possible, and then start understanding about the solution before, and second is obviously the discovering the right problem and big problem. Yes, these are basic things that you do for every business, but in fintech, you just have to bring the regulatory angle in addition to that, so that it
Right.
shouldn't happen. You are thinking something, but your market is not allowing you to build it. You don't want to be on the wrong side regulatory because it's a very responsible space, right? If you make mistake, there could be a big damage to the society that we have to
True.
understand and recognize.
Correct. Very true.
Second part, second part, if someone has to come work with cash, we I'd expect them to have very good understanding of business we are in and understand what can and understand what can make us more successful, right? I mean, the kind of businesses we are serving, why are they needing cash fee, and how can cash fee help them become more successful? So that understanding thing is very crucial in deciding where to put their time and energy, right? If you are, say, an engineer in cash fee and trying to build a plugin for an e-commerce framework, right, you have to
Hmm.
make sure plugin doesn't have a bug, that guy is not losing money because of plugin error, and it's very easy for them to install. It's needed because that guy doesn't have time to spend on payment integration, right? He just want to
Yeah.
get started with the business. So if you don't have understanding, then someone has to keep coming back and telling you do this, do that, right? And this makes job harder for the entire organization. And that I think is true for any startup. Having the right understanding of the business their company is in is a very strong advantage for any employee, right? And their
Of
decisions
course.
will be largely right if they have this understanding.
No, that's great to hear. And of course, overall, in the payment ecosystem, also, like you said, having a sense of where we are at, I think is super important, right? This is a very fast evolving ecosystem as well. I think you have a ringside view on how India is doing, and in comparison to others, even. So it's a very dynamic environment, and that's why it's great to have folks like you come talk to us, talk to everyone, share the views, journeys, and insights on what is possible. And that's what we aim to do with the rest of this series as well. So
Mm.
I think it's a great first start to the series. Akash, thank you once again for kicking this off for us. It's been a great conversation.
No, thank you very much, and always a pleasure.